excited. I am so excited to speak with Winston RIDGARD today. I am telling you, the dreamer, the hard worker, and him still working hard and everything. Winston RIDGARD, the first general manager of Love 101, who interviewed me at that little desk at Carlton Crescent many years ago. Good day to you, Mr. RIDGARD. How are you?
I am wonderful and enjoying my retirement.
I hear that voice. I'm like, somebody ought to be using that voice. Oh, beautiful. Mr. RIDGARD, can you take us? This is called The Faces of Love, and you certainly are one of those faces that we can't do without. I hope I didn't freeze a while ago. But your face, your voice, an integral part of what the happenings here at Love 101. What was your first link with love?
The first link with love came through Webster Memorial Church and a reverend who occupied chair at that time. My friend Oliver Daly was a rector at there, and
Yes.
apparently he had a meeting. The church organization apparently came together and envisaged a radio station for religious purposes. And in their conversation, I remember your uncle, Bishop Harold Blair, said to Oliver Daly that, but the person we want is a member of your church, so contact him. And that was the initial thing. Oliver Daly called me and told me that they had an interest in this.
Wow.
And whether I was willing to assist them. And I said, indubitably, yes, I would be able to assist. When do you want me to start? Today? And he says, well, let me see what's happened. But I said, well, I am ready from today, because that was my focus. I went to university in Toronto in Canada, and I studied radio and television arts. And at that institution, I developed the urge to have a radio station for myself. Wow. But when I came back to Jamaica and I started working elsewhere, the authorities did not envision a radio station of religious purposes. And eventually they said, if the church organization came together, then they would be prepared to consider that. So that was
that was your journey, and then while that was happening, something else was happening on the other side with.
That's quite true. I also
goodness.
understood, if I may say so, that there was an application or an interest from your uncle, from Bishop Harold Blair. He had an interest in the station, and apparently he had received a similar response from government, indicating that they would consider an application from the church organization. And that is how the National Religious Media Commission came into being. And how Oliver Daly, who was a member of the organizing committee, then he made contact with me. And I was so pleased. I was happy my aspirations were coming to fruit. And Love 101 came into being.
I think this is wonderful. You know, you had that dream, and God placed it in you, placed it in Bishop Harold, placed it in different persons. At the same time, God knew what he was doing. He did.
Absolutely, he did. Yes, and I was so pleased because my aspirations were being fulfilled.
Yes.
Although, and I enjoyed the period of time that I spent at Love at the desk, because in the initial stages, if I may say so myself, that I was the person who created a lot of the things. Obviously, we had meetings almost every week. The board met almost every week. But indeed, the design, the elements of creativity and design were presented through me, and God knew what he was doing. Yes. And here it is that Love was created. I am so pleased.
Your name, is engrafted in the history, the foundation, every step you take, every turn you make, there were so many of us who were trained by you. You would come in the studio and show us how to use a board, how to use the 8-track. Remember that? And I know some young person is going, 8-track, what's that? It have 8 tracks? No. Well, I don't even know. But and I spoke with a few persons, and each in the same feature, Faces of Love, and each of them have called your name, and just talked about how you played a role in their participation in the life of love. And we salute you, Mr. Rigard.
I am privileged. I enjoyed it immensely. The
Yes.
development, the training of the staff, the relationship with the church organization across the
Yes.
island, and the viewers, the listeners. I can't forget how they responded in the initial stages, and they still
Yes.
do respond as well too. And I really enjoyed meeting all of them across the island. My my work was a 7th-day work, schedule, 7 days per week, and
I
I
don't
really
agree. I think it's 8 days. I think
yes,
you
yes,
worked 8 days because you were almost like head cook and bottle washer. You did just about everything. Back then we didn't have enough staff, and so Mr. Regard, you were general manager, you were doing the technical for the broadcast. I mean, it was a small, tight knit family. But you did so much. Did you ever tire? Did you ever feel weary?
I never really got tired at all because there always was something new to be implemented, some aspect of it that I didn't think measured up to the standards that was required. And therefore, we had to work alongside the staff, work alongside the associates. And the advertising fraternity gave me a
Yes.
lot of encouragement. And also the religious people, the churches, the various different church organizations with which I worked, they're the ones who said, well, why don't you try this? Or why don't you do that? Or I would go to them with an idea and they would say, yes, we can work with you on that one. And
Yes.
therefore, we developed that kind of camaraderie all around the island in all the churches, the various church
Yes.
organizations. And today, even after I retired from there, I will go out and I will meet some of the leaders and the members of the religious fraternity. And they would say, yes, why don't you do something else?
Yes.
We long to see you or we long to hear you. But,
Yes.
you know, those are the things that come with having worked so intensely. And
Yes.
believe you me, it was more than a 24-hour per day activity. And I really enjoyed it. I never felt tired at all. Never felt
Wow.
tired. And there
Can
were
you
so many.
remember?
Go
And it
ahead.
was so what?
I beg your pardon.
And can you remember any? And this is going to be a hard one because there are so many. But can you
Oh,
remember features that you started? I was talking with Yvonne, and she mentioned Good Samaritan and how that name came up. She was talking with you, and you just said, "How about the Good Samaritan?" And it was just like, wow. And perhaps there was that feature. And I can think of the concert hour. I remember working the Inner Glow and go, or well, back then it wasn't the Inner Glow, it was a different name, Moments in Music and so on or something.
yes.
But and I would always be like, oh God, I don't this music. But you would always have persons who would call. I remember someone called once and said that they have to journey all the way to, I think, Montego Bay, and so they find pleasure in listening to the concert hour as they drive. What were some of the features that you started, named, or took part in?
Well, some of them I have difficulty in remembering. I remember, of course, I remember the concert hour
Of
because
course.
classical music is something that is endemic. I have loved classical music from the days of going to primary school in
Wow.
St. Elizabeth. And
Yes.
just to give you an indication, my introduction to classical music really came through an instrument which is called the auto roll piano.
The Hoover?
The teacher at this primary school that I attended lived across the road on the hill, and they had an auto roll piano. It is something that it it reproduces the music on a basis of something almost looking like a rolling pin, but it
Yes.
has spikes in there, and when they turned it, it activated the keys on the piano, and she would be playing the classical music on a Sunday evening, and I would be across the road under the tree, seated there and listening to this glorious music. But the concert hour was just one thing. The other thing that I wanted to go to the children, and yourself and Colleen came up with the ideas of the programs for the
Yes.
children. And
Yes.
I embraced that totally, because I felt that the children needed to be a part of our organization.
Yes.
Morning Glory was something that I introduced a program in the morning called Morning Glory, because that was the description of a flower that grew up in the hills of St. Elizabeth. And every morning it would open up, and then it would fade down in the evening. But in the morning, it was a glorious thing. So,
Oh my goodness.
wonderful. The Good Samaritan, I just was reading the Bible, and I saw the story in the Bible, and I said, this has to be part of our instrument organization.
Yes.
And there were many, many others, but they came because of relationships with people, relationships that my experience, and the contribution that these people made, because the listeners wanted the success. They had embraced the idea of religious broadcasting so much, and they
Yes.
wanted the success of this element. When I went out in the country on a Sunday morning for a broadcast, or for any other broadcast activity, because as you correctly said a while ago, that I was instrumental in the 80s. I was the head cook on board the workshop. I did the technical work, and therefore, when I went out there, the people spoke to me, and they gave me these ideas. So all of it was a reproduction of the conversations that I had, of the relationship that I had, and I had a wonderful set of staff members, believe you me. Every staff member who came in was so interested in the station. Some didn't last long, didn't stay there very long, but at the same time, there was others whose service I applaud, because their contribution was intense.
Yes.
Persons like yourself, persons like Colleen, persons like Nigel, for instance, and there was one, the late Dean Reed.
Yes.
All of those persons had a commitment,
Yes.
a devout commitment, and there were members of the board as well too, who worked so well. I mean, their interest went beyond sitting in their monthly meeting. Definitely beyond that, way beyond that. And I am so pleased to have been an instrument in serving the Lord and serving the interests of the people on this religious element. Love 101. Oh boy, I think about it every day.
Your heart feels good, don't it?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, if I do hear, and I have never heard a derogatory word about love in any element at all. And whenever I meet somebody who remembers, last week I was in a pharmacy, and the pharmacist called my name, and there was a gentleman in the pharmacy, and when I was about to leave, he said, "Mr. RIDGARD," I said, "Yes," I hesitantly, and he says that you don't know me, but I know of you, and I am pleased to meet you. I wondered where you were, but I'm pleased to meet you, because I spent so many years listening to Love 101,
Wow.
And, I go back to the concert hour, because that is one of my favorite programs.
Yes.
Right? And I tell you something, that I was in the plaza one day, and there was this gentleman. It was the evening time for the concert hour, and there was a gentleman on his coconut cart with his little transistor radio, and he was listening and somebody came up by him and said, "Is what that you're listening to, man?" The fellow said, "Don't you interrupt me at all. This is a
Wow.
program that elevates me. I want to hear the concert hour. Please go
Yes.
about your business and leave me alone."
It's true. I've heard that. Yeah, a lot of persons enjoyed it. And for those who didn't know what, I think I'll play a little bit of my favorite after this interview, Gershwin Rhapsody in Blue.
Oh man, oh lovely.
Classical music, yes. Of course, we can't have anniversary month, anniversary day, anniversary week, and not engage with Winston Ridgard, who
Well, thank you.
just did so much. And your training, there's so many persons who have passed through Love or are serving at other media houses, and they learned from you. And
Yes.
we hail you, we appreciate you, and Love 101 is in many ways indebted to you for the work that you have done. What
Well,
is your prayer for Love 101 now?
my prayer is that you will continue to be instrument of focus for religious broadcasting, for the constant elements of parent and family presentations, because without the family, then we are nothing. Love
Um,
101 has embraced the family concept. It's a family station, and I endorse you. I implore you to continue in that kind of focus, because everything depends on the family unit, and
yes.
you are the instrument of connectivity. Keep up, keep on the good work. Make sure that you are in fact in the seat of authority for family communication across the nation.
I love it. You know, I tell you, I could sit and talk with you all day. But I just remember a story, and I really want you to just mention it a little bit.
Yes.
We learned so much. One of the things we learned from you was being descriptive when we go on an outside broadcast, especially if things aren't in place and you have to fill the time. And I use that I learned from you also for when I'm doing MC duties. But you told a story about somebody in Britain, the Thames, I think it was. Do you remember that? And a
Yes,
race that,
I
yes,
I remember it. It's a story about uh, a royal visit to California, and the lecturer at the university I went to the University of Ryerson in Toronto, and the lecturer says that as a presenter, you have to be prepared for any eventuality. There was a
hmm,
commentator to describe the passage of the Royal Yacht Britannia going up the river, and
yes,
his responsibility was to describe the passage of the boat going up there, taking Her Majesty the Queen up on the river. And the
yes.
fog was so thick that he could not see the end of the building he was in. But the time showed that he should be describing it. And
Facts,
therefore,
right.
he pursued to describe the passage of the boat going up the river. And he could hear foghorns, so he wouldn't be able to tell what was what. And at the end of the broadcast period, his supervisor called him and congratulated him on the marvelous commentary that he had given. And then his supervisor said, the only thing is that the fog was so thick that the boat never entered the river at all.
I've never forgotten that. I've never forgotten that. And people may wonder why we're laughing, but I thought I've never ever forgotten it, and I've used it when I'm training other announcers,
Yes.
just to be that good at describing what. Just open your eyes and look around, and talk about what you're seeing or not seeing. Yes,
Well,
thank
I
you so
remember
much.
that story because it enforced, your creativity. You have
Yes.
to be prepared, and
Yes.
in your
Yes.
preparations, you so half of the things that you prepare for may not emerge, but at the
Yes.
same time you are prepared. And in the event that you need to, then you are in a position. You have absolutely, you are in command, and you're able to impart information relative to the subject matter. But
Yes.
indeed, it shows that preparation,
Was
preparation,
yeah.
preparation.
Mr. Regard, thank you so much.
It's
Winston
such a good
Regard.
thing to talk to you.
Yes, I'm
Yes.
happy that we were able to talk with you during this feature, 28 Faces of Love.
It was my pleasure, and I will always be available, God willing. I will be waiting your call or anybody else's for that matter. I am always available. Love 101 is indeed my life.
Oh,
Thank you so much.
God bless you. Thank you.